I love these Yogi Bhajan quotes like this. It is at the frequency at which you sensitively feel the frequency of projection to which you understand the answer with the root cause of the effect, and you do not cause a cause to affect the effect, but you uplift. It's called wisdom formula. Write it down. If you don't use this formula, it doesn't matter who you are, how educated you are, you will be stupid. So there we go. All right, so anyway, what else are we doing tonight? Truth is everywhere the same. The problem is insensitivity to self, insensitivity to me, not insensitivity to others, right? Because if you want to kill someone, first kill your own feelings. Or sometimes we hear that in a common language, he doesn't have the empathy chip. Right? There's a lot of people on this planet that they great pain to others, they're turned off. They don't understand that everything's an extension. So insensitivity to self is what we're trying to avoid. And the culture is very, skilled at creating that insensitivity to your own self. And so once I have I have an insensitivity to me, and then that I can easily develop a self-vindictiveness, a kind of a self-hate, self-anger, which then I project on the outside world, and I don't really relate to the outside world, I just relate to the outside world as an extension of my own internal dramas. Fair enough? I have a good story. There's this meditation called Jupiter meditation, where you satanama, and you go back. It's a kind of intense thing, but you go looking in the past for problematic subconscious patterns. And this guy was telling me, and he's come around a lot and done the Mahan Jap, so he has quite a few recitations moving him inside this subconscious landscape. And he was telling me he was doing that meditation the other day, and he could, for the first time, hear and then feel his mother prior to his conception and during his pregnancy. I said, well, what kind of things? Not good. Right? So any kind of fear the mother had or environmental problems the mother had, those get imprinted. Because I don't know about you, but most of us weren't born by saints. So, but here's the interesting thing now. So inside my subconscious landscape, those patterns are broadcasting. So, and that's original kind of imprinted fear, insecurity, or doubts, or whatever it might be. So that broadcasts into whatever thought stream I'm currently subscribing to or participating in. It's also added to by this, let's call it a kind of a fear pattern that my mother installed unknowingly. I mean, she was doing her best, but nevertheless, she installed that right from my early days. So what made this interesting meditation for this guy is he was able to go back to before conception. I was actually wanted to see Amma, the hugging, and some guy said you should talk to so-and-so while we were waiting. And this was some American-born sadhu guy who was in his 90s or something like this and started babbling on. He had walked across America in the 50s and was just begging his way across like a yogi from India does. It just wanders around the begging bowl. But he was telling me he remembered very distinctly right before he got in the womb and what he was leaving and what he arrived at. And he said I was very clear about what I was giving up. And he said but that cosmic memory of where I was before I got in the womb is essentially why I never married or had a family or had any kind of job. I just wanted to keep praising that divine creator where I had come from. And many years he had some kind of, I think his mantra was Ram or something like that. Just chant Ram, Ram. So anyway, what this guy discovered is I could feel partially the imprinted fear pattern that was installed as I came into that womb of my mother, and then as I stayed in the womb of the mother and then left the womb of the mother, that this pattern is still broadcasting into everything I'm doing, right? And in Yogi Bhajan's language, that projection from that thought colors all my other thoughts. And sometimes it can cloak the thought, right? I want to do something, but that imprint comes over it and completely disguises what I want to do. And I end up doing essentially what the fear pattern is telling me to do. Are you with me on this one? Because I think I'm doing what I set out to do, but my thought was hijacked by the fear pattern, and I'm actually committing something I didn't want to do. Not to get too graphic about this, but just in the news, that bad rape case out the football player or something like that, his defense is he didn't remember it, which is probably a clever legal invention by his lawyer, but the notion is that I did some behavior and I have no conscious memory of it because my action was hijacked by the subconscious projection. Okay? So I have to escape that, and I escape that by generating enough energy, having enough pranic. Let's start. Point one, I have to have enough pranic energy in order to move the system. That's why I do regular breath of fire or breathing, some kind of meditation, conscious breath. Then I have to have strengthened my nervous system so I can hold a higher energetic charge. Simple enough? Okay, then I need a mantra that has some kind of intelligent directional energy to go in and dismantle those broadcasting structures. And this guy had gone deep into the subconscious layers because he had enough energy and he had enough sophisticated tools to do that. But then he still has to dismantle it, right? Okay, when I don't dismantle that, right? My mother's fear pattern is broadcasting in, and I was just mean to so-and-so today, and I didn't want to do that. That wasn't my intent, but the fact was I was mean. So I turned that, what would you call it, meanness on me. So there's a self-vindictiveness. I did the wrong thing, so I feel guilt. And who ran with that pattern? That real estate outfit out of Italy, and the Vatican goes. Well, they knew this was a mechanism, right? So they figured, okay, everyone starts with original sin. So you mean you're guilty before you even show up here, right? Because it's easy. Yeah, I must be. So then I take that, and that creates an insensitivity. Because I'm beating myself up for things that I did that I didn't want to do, or I thought I could have done better. And particularly if that fear pattern is broadcasting in, because that gets mixed up with the voice of my actual mother criticizing me. So it gets all kind of jumbled up in there. Good? No, it's not good. No, say it's good. It's a trick question. Yeah, no, it's not. No, it's bad. It's bad. Okay. Wisdom. At the frequency at which you sensitively feel the frequency of the projection. So someone is sending some projection over into my energy field, into my awareness. I'm being asked a question. I have to sensitively feel what kind of frequency, what station is that coming from? Is it coming from, if I'm on a radio dial, is it a rock and roll station, jazz station, classical music station, news station? I have to figure out where on the dial that's coming from. You know, what part of their psyche is broadcasting into me? Good. But I'm only going to be able to do that if all my energy is not being consumed on my own self-belittlement, my own self-doubt, my own self-criticism, my own kind of jumble of acquired fears and so forth. Okay, once I understand where that you're projecting from, and there's a root cause of the effect. In other words, you're coming from there's a certain root energy field you're broadcasting from. Right? That's you, or that's your mother talking, or that's some fear, that's some program you picked up. I was talking to this lady once, who was a little going off the rails about, we were sitting maybe in this room and she started yelling at me because I was making it rain. And I'm saying, I don't think it's raining in here. No, it's certainly raining in here. You can see, can't you see it's raining in here? So we were just completely out to lunch. And I said, that's because you're running a program about raining indoors that I have nothing to do with. And at that point she screams, like in a rage, "Don't you try to fix me." Which is, that's a root. There was a hypnotist I knew who was working with a guy who was in his late 30s who couldn't read. And otherwise he's very intelligent, successful, but couldn't read. There was actually a hockey player in Montreal Canadiens. Do you know this guy?
What's his name?
He retired hockey player and then became general manager and president for quite a number of years, very successful. And when he retired, he said that he couldn't read. He had stumbled his way through with secretaries, reading things to him and so on. So you can make your way, it's difficult. How many sign their checks like with an X? No? No one watches TV. In the old days, if you were illiterate, X was your signature. So this hypnotist is working with this guy, and he's regressing him back, because he knows he's intelligent enough, but just has some blockage about learning to read, and finally gets the guy screaming at him, "Go to hell, Mrs. Bridges." And he goes, "Oh, who's Mrs. Bridges?" "My third grade teacher," who got the guy angry, and so his anger against this lady was he was not going to read because that's what she wanted to do, and he wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of reading. And this is going on for whatever, 30 years later, he's still in that subconscious battle. So the root, that's the root. Okay, so once I can tune in, because I have the sensitivity to tune into the root of where you're projecting from, there's a root cause of the effect. And you do not cause a cause to affect the effect. Yeah, Mrs. Bridges, just go to hell. Yeah, I agree. She says, I'm buying into your malfunction and strengthening it. Yeah, my mom was mean to me. You follow? You're causing the cause. So you don't basically relate to the person's neurotic pattern. We all tried that, haven't we? No, I'm not asking anyone to raise their hand. I do not cause a cause to affect the effect, but you uplift. That's wisdom, that's the formula. Take the person on their own grounds, where they're coming. Don't push yourself. Listen carefully, understand and find out where the cavity, right? There's some kind of, inside that projection, there's some opening, right? There's some opening. And that's where you can elevate the person. And that's all it's about. Because Mrs. Bridges is dead. If you say that with the right frequency, or she's long gone. Gone. If gone has the right, I'm holding I'm interlocked with Mrs. Bridges, therefore I'm not gonna learn to read, because I got this subconscious thing here. And when I can then pinpoint the root cause, Mrs. Bridges is gone, and gone moves with the right frequency, projected from the right chakra, moving at the right velocity, has the right kind of caliber. That thing will, and all of a sudden the guy can come in present day and easily pick up the skill. So that's the opening I'm looking for. And you do it when? At that time. Because that's time, everything changes with time. You know, your as and nobody's perfect. So all you're looking for is an opportunity to uplift. And that's wisdom. That you're an uplifting force. But you have to have the self-sensitivity so that you're not essentially being, you know, my third grade teacher, I had trouble. Right? It becomes a self-reference for my issues. Let's talk about my problems here for a moment. Right? So everything then turns in here, and you're not relating to the other person. By the way, how many of us have tried relationships like that? It's a good game, isn't it? You find common likes and then common dislikes, and then you kind of relate to your dislikes and dislikes while they relate to their likes and dislikes, and that's because you think there's an exchange happening, or you think they're actually relating. But things sort of change, and well, we grew apart because there was no effective sensitivity, self-sensitivity to connect to something. What are you trying to connect to over another person? The flow of the soul, right? So we have to go into the subconscious and find out where these structures are and dismantle them. Now, do I have to consciously be aware of that? That's correct. No. How are we doing? I'm losing everybody. The mantras will go and take care of it. And all of a sudden, I always struggled reading, and then one day I'm fine. And remember I had that girl, I liked that girl, some time ago, came to my class. And it was just a regular afternoon class, and we taught a regular set and did a little meditation. I didn't think anything special. And she later told me, she said, I was always obsessed with my looks and my dress. I mean, a lot of women are obsessed with those things, but I was over the top about it. And all of a sudden, sometime during that class, I thought, you know, and she said, I heard myself say it. I said, it's okay to just be me. And I thought, wow. And she goes, and I thought, she was in her 30s, I think. She said, this is revolutionary. So this was like completely against everything I'd ever done and thought in my life. So I thought, this will go away. And she says, I'll tell me if it lasts a week. And she goes, so during that week, I just started, you know, changing my wardrobe a little bit and rearranging my closet a little bit. And then it came to be a week and it was still there. I still felt me, and that I wasn't part of this whole kind of persona I had developed. I thought, no, I'm not going to tell him because it'll probably go away by the end of this week. And then this pattern goes on for weeks and months. And she cuts her hair. At one point, she gets some money and throws all her stuff out and starts buying a whole nother wardrobe. And she says, I'm a completely different person. And she says, it's been a year now and I'm telling you about it. But there kept part of me saying, it'll go away. And I was kind of believing that voice more than I was believing what was happening to me. And so what happened was time essentially gave me the confidence that I had really changed. And what had happened somewhere in that class, there was a thought form, which is usually a conglomeration of a whole bunch of things, and it's kind of like a small island nation there. Has a government, and then there's some old crotchety dictator like Castro who pokes his head up and says, I haven't heard anything from the Americans. Did you hear Castro say that today? Yeah, so he's probably piped up now, you know. So who knows if he was even alive, but he's weighing in on this whole, you know, thawing of relations. because he spent his whole life with his enemy, the United States, and it kind of messes with his programming to become friends at the end. So there's usually that small island nation broadcasting in, and you have to get quite a bit past it time-wise to realize that the thing actually has just faded into the past. So what happened during that class was one breath, one sound, and it's not necessarily me, it might have been her, right? That she sat there and she decided, okay, I'm going to chant Om Namo Gurudev Namo in a way that really connects to my soul. Meanwhile, I'm up here thinking, like I am mostly, do I look good? or I'm distracted, what am I going to have for dinner after class? Or, Kippy's has an ice cream sale, and she's thinking about, tweeting somebody. But there's one person who said, okay, I'm going to just connect. And could be just like that. That beginning of that mantra had the right frequency. That frequency entered the room, moved around, and went like a laser to that woman's thought form that she has to be something other than herself in order to be who she wants to become. And all of a sudden that thing just went, and it just vanished. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we're hunting. That's what we're hoping, praying, is that in each time every moment of the day, we're trying to hope that somehow I can take a breath, I can chant a mantra, I can do a kind act, I can do a sensitive act, I can do a, what would you call it, aware gesture, that somewhere it'll help somebody. Maybe me, or maybe the ghost that lives in my place, the crotchety ghost that won't get too afraid to leave, right? So that's what you're doing. And essentially that energy goes, and the woman's all of a sudden, she's free of that whole program that she might have been running for lifetimes, yeah. So when this guy hears his mother's thoughts, when he's before he's conceived, she's probably playing a recording that she picked up from
her grandma.
Yeah, back. It could go back and back and back. And then you're playing out just a line of kind of a drama that everyone has to read the accepted script. So that's what we're trying to do, change all that. All right, so that's what we're up to tonight, fixing the wisdom of the ages.